This video about full match schedule and picture for FIFA World Cup 2026 group stage. Match Day 1, Thursday, June 11th. Mexico vs. South Africa. South Korea vs. Czechia. Friday, June 12th. Canada vs. Bosnia and Herzegovina. USA vs. Paraguay. Saturday, June 13th. Qatar vs. Switzerland, Brazil vs. Morocco, Haiti vs. Scotland, Australia vs. Turkey. Sunday, June 14th. Germany vs. Curacao, Netherlands vs. Japan, Ecuador vs. Indonesia, Sweden vs. Tunisia. Monday, June 15th. Spain vs. Cabo Verde, Belgium vs. Egypt, Saudi Arabia vs. Uruguay, Iran vs. New Zealand. Tuesday, June 16th. France vs. Senegal, Iraq vs. Norway, Argentina vs. Algeria, Austria vs. Jordan. Wednesday, June 17th. Portugal vs. Congo DR, England vs. Croatia, Ghana vs. Panama, Uzbekistan vs. Colombia. Match Day 2, Thursday, June 18th. Czechia vs. South Africa, Switzerland vs. Bosnia and Herzegovina, Canada vs. Qatar, Mexico vs. South Korea. Friday, June 19th. USA vs. Australia, Scotland vs. Morocco, Brazil vs. Haiti, Turkey vs. Paraguay. Saturday, June 20th. Netherlands vs. Sweden, Germany vs. Côte d'Ivoire, Ecuador vs. Curacao, Indonesia vs. Japan. Sunday, June 21st. Spain vs. Saudi Arabia, Belgium vs. Iran, Uruguay vs. Cabo Verde, New Zealand vs. Egypt. Monday, June 22nd. Argentina vs. Austria, France vs. Iraq, Norway vs. Senegal, Jordan vs. Algeria. Tuesday, June 23rd. Portugal vs. Uzbekistan, England vs. Ghana, Panama vs. Croatia, Colombia vs. Congo DR. Match Day 3, Wednesday, June 24th. Switzerland vs. Canada, Bosnia and Herzegovina vs. Qatar, Scotland vs. Brazil, Morocco vs. Haiti, Czechia vs. Mexico, South Africa vs. South Korea. Thursday, June 25th. Curacao vs. Côte d'Ivoire, Ecuador vs. Germany, Japan vs. Sweden, Tunisia vs. Netherlands, Turkey vs. USA, Paraguay vs. Australia. Friday, June 26th. Norway vs. France, Senegal vs. Iraq, Uruguay vs. Spain, Cabo Verde vs. Saudi Arabia, Egypt vs. Iran, New Zealand vs. Belgium. Saturday, June 27th. Croatia vs. Ghana, Panama vs. England, Congo DR vs. Uzbekistan, Colombia vs. Portugal, Algeria vs. Austria, Jordan vs. Argentina.